It is 2:38 in the morning on the 17th of January, 1991, and there is no moon over the Iraqi desert. 8 American attack helicopters are moving across it at 50 feet. 50 feet is nothing. 50 feet is close enough that the rotor wash drags a wake through the sand behind them, close enough that a man standing on the ground would feel it in his chest before he ever heard it. They have been flying for nearly 2 hours in total blackout, navigation lights off, radios cold, following 4 Air Force Pave lows that are threading the route on terrain following radar, because the charts out here are worthless. Inside the cockpits, the world is green and grainy through night vision, and the air tastes like exhaust and cold metal and adrenaline going stale. 90 miles inside Iraq, 2 Iraqi early warning radar sites are painting the sky. Behind them, coalition strike formations are already moving, waiting on a corridor that does not exist yet. More than 900 aircraft will eventually pour through the gap these 8 are about to make. The entire opening of the air war is standing on the shoulders of 8 helicopters and the men strapped into them. In 22 minutes it starts, whether anyone is ready or not. First, Lieutenant Tom Drew keys his microphone, and 3 words go out across the formation. They are the last 3 words before the first shots of Operation Desert Storm. Party in 10. Nobody in those cockpits is thinking about the word stenciled on the side of the aircraft. They have too much to do. But that word was not chosen by the men who fly it. It was chosen off a list, under a regulation, and the list was supplied by an agency of the federal government that had spent the previous century doing something else entirely to the people that word belongs to. That is the other war story in this song. I'm Warrior Shaman, this is War Stories Behind the Song, and this is Apache. I put this song out twice, and I want to be upfront about that before we go anywhere. The first version came out in August of 2025. I liked it, I still like it, but it did not flow the way I heard it in my head, and that bothered me for months. So I went back and I remastered it. And when I got in there, I found that the problem was not the hook. The chorus was fine. The chorus is almost word for word the same in both versions because there was never anything wrong with it. The problem was the verses. They were too smooth, too many long vowels, too much air, not enough edge. So I tore them out and rebuilt them, and what came back was harder, faster, and a lot more specific. The first version described the aircraft. The second version speaks its language. That was not a plan, that is just what happened when I chased the rhythm, and I only understood it afterward. I will tell you straight that I gave up some good writing to do it. There is a line in the first version, in the bridge, and it goes, "Now they crawl in steel and kill in form." That is the best line I cut, and some days I think I should have found a way to keep it. Both versions are in this episode. We are walking both in order all the way through. One thing before we start. What follows is compressed. 50 years of a machine, more than 3 centuries of a people, and a naming convention sitting on top of both like a lid. Historians have spent careers on any single piece of it. I am giving you the load-bearing parts. I am telling you where the record is thin, and I am telling you plainly where I am choosing not to go. I am going to start with the aircraft, because the aircraft is the easy part. In 1972, the United States Army launched the Advanced Attack Helicopter program. It came out of the wreckage of the Lockheed Cheyenne, and it was aimed at replacing the Bell Cobra, which had come out of Vietnam as a stopgap and stayed because nothing better existed. The Army had stopped thinking about jungles. It was thinking about the North German plain and about Warsaw-packed armor stacked in echelons that outnumbered NATO's tanks by margins nobody in Brussels liked to say out loud. The requirement was blunt. Build something that kills tanks at night, in weather, from low altitude, and survives being shot at while it does it. Two competitors made the cut. Bell offered the Model 409, two-bladed rotor, tricycle landing gear. Hughes offered the Model 77, four-bladed rotor, tailwheel. On the 30th of September, 1975, at Palomar Airport in Carlsbad, California, Hughes' chief test pilot Robert Ferry and Raleigh Fletcher lifted the prototype into a hover. Bell flew theirs the following day. In December of 1976, the Army chose Hughes. The stated reasons were the four-bladed rotor's tolerance for battle damage and the stability of the tailwheel configuration. Some observers at the time believed the real reason was that the Army did not want to pull Bell off Cobra production. I flag that as informed speculation, not established fact. Full-scale production was approved in 1982. The first production aircraft rolled out at the Hughes plant in Mesa, Arizona on the 30th of September, 1983, 8 years to the day after the prototype first flew. Hughes was bought by McDonnell Douglas in 1984, and McDonnell Douglas merged into Boeing in 1997. The aircraft entered Army service in April of 1986. By 2020, 2,500 of them had been built. Now the shape of it, because the lyrics live in the hardware. 4 blades, 2 General Electric turboshaft engines uprated across the variants from roughly 1,600 to nearly 1,900 shaft horsepower each, a 48-foot rotor, and a fuselage roughly that same length. With the blades turning, she runs a little over 58 feet nose to tail, maximum speed around 182 miles an hour. 2 crew seated in tandem. The co-pilot gunner sits forward and low in the nose. The pilot sits behind and above him, stepped up so he can see over the front seat. Under the forward fuselage, slung between the main gear, hangs a 30mm chain gun with 1,200 rounds. 4 hardpoints on the stub wings carry the rest. That is the airframe. Any enthusiast can recite it. Here is the part they usually skip. The word painted on the side came from Army Regulation 70-28, created in 1969, revised on the 18th of June, 1976. It did not suggest that Army aircraft carry native names. It required it. The regulations specified Indian terms and the names of American Indian tribes and chiefs, and it set criteria the name had to meet. It had to appeal to the imagination without sacrificing dignity. It had to suggest an aggressive spirit and confidence in the aircraft's capabilities. It had to reflect mobility, agility, flexibility, firepower, and endurance. The candidate names were supplied by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The federal agency created to administer native nations kept a list of their names on hand for the Army to pick gunships out of. The Army traces the practice further back to General Hamilton Howze around 1947, who is said to have disliked the names Hoverfly and Dragonfly on the first 2 Army helicopters and picked Sioux for the next one. I want to be careful with that. It appears in an Army press release attributed to an unnamed museum official, and it has been repeated everywhere since. It may well be true. It is not documented the way the regulation is documented. Take it as the Army's account of itself. The aircraft was named Apache in late 1981. The regulation has since been rescinded. The tradition continued anyway, which tells you how deep it went. So that is the machine, and that is the name. Now, let's get to the songs. The first version opens with a voice, and the voice is not a soldier. Once the sky held spirits made of wind and bone. Now it carries something colder. It does not speak. It does not sleep, it hunts. We called it Apache. 6 lines, and the whole thesis is already on the table. There is a before and an after. Something used to live up there, and something else lives up there now, and the second thing is colder than the first. Notice that the name arrives at the top. The listener is told what this is before they are shown anything. Hold on to that, because it moves later. First verse. Check the skyline, feel that hiss, a mounted archer with a hellfire kiss. No hooves, but the ground still rings, just despair when the missile sings. A mounted archer is doing real work in that line. An archer on horseback is the oldest standoff weapon system there is. You shoot from beyond the reach of the man you are shooting at, and then you are somewhere else before he can close the distance. That is not a metaphor for the Apache. That is a functional description of it. And Hellfire is the missile, and the name has a history worth knowing. It started as a program title. Helicopter Launched Fire and Forget Missile. Take the front of it and you get Hellfire, and the Army almost certainly noticed the second meaning and kept it. But the name outlived the concept. The original Fire and Forget Seeker got canceled. The Hellfire that actually went to war is laser-guided, which means somebody has to hold a laser on the target until the missile arrives, either the aircraft that shot it or somebody else. The true Fire and Forget version is the radar-guided Longbow Hellfire, and it came later. We will come back to that because the remaster gives it a line of its own. No hooves, but the ground still rings. The horse is going to keep showing up in both versions of this song, and it is not decoration. American attack aviation is the direct descendant of the cavalry. Air cavalry squadrons carry cavalry lineage, cavalry guidons, cavalry designations. When the song says no hooves, it is naming the thing that used to do this job. The pre-chorus drops to a whisper. Ironhide, gates at a jog, stalks the realm, a cursed war dog. Gates at a jog is horse language again. A jog is a working pace, not a sprint. It is what you move at when you have somewhere to be and all day to get there. The aircraft has become an animal, and it is going to stay one for the rest of the song. Then the chorus, and this is the part that survived the rewrite nearly untouched. Apache, twin turbos, death rides 2. Apache, longbow points, Tads fire true. Apache, chain gun grins with brim pulled low. Apache, hydras crack, Gon's vengeance flows. 4 call and response pairs, and every one of them is a piece of hardware except the last. Let's take them in order, because this is the vocabulary the whole rest of the episode runs on. Twin turbos, 2 engines, and they are turbo shafts rather than turbochargers, which is a real distinction. A turboshaft is a jet engine that has given up making thrust and puts all of its energy into spinning a shaft instead. That shaft turns the rotor. Turbos does not scan the same, and I am not going to pretend otherwise, but the count is right and the layout is right. Death rides 2, 2 crew in tandem. Longbow. That is the radar. It sits in a drum mounted above the rotor mast, which means the aircraft can hide the entire airframe behind a ridge and leave nothing exposed but the sensor. The name comes from the medieval weapon, and it is well chosen. A longbow is about reach and volume, killing at a distance before the other side can answer. TADS, Target Acquisition Designation Site. That is the turret on the nose, and it belongs to the front seater. It finds the target, it magnifies it, and it puts a laser on it so the missile has something to follow. Acquisition, designation, site. The name is the job description. Chain gun. This is the one people get wrong most often. It is a 30-millimeter cannon, and it is not a rotary weapon like the Warthogs. It has one barrel. The chain in the name is literal, an actual chain driven by an electric motor, and that chain is what works the bolt back and forth. Around 625 rounds a minute, 1,200 rounds on board. Hydras. Hydra 70 rockets. Unguided, fired from pods of 19 tubes. The 70 is 70 millimeters, which is the diameter of the rocket, 2.75 inches in the old measurement. The fins fold flat, so it fits down the tube and snap open when it comes out. And then the last one, which is not hardware at all, the gon. We are going to come back to that word and give it the time it deserves, because it is the only thing in this chorus that is not made of metal, and it is the reason this song is more interesting than a spec sheet. Second verse. They called for fire, guardian engage, a flying tank with a hunter's rage, no mercy given, no warning cry, righteous wrath raining down from on high. They called for fire is exactly how it happens. Attack aviation does not usually go hunting on its own. Somebody on the ground has a problem and gets on the radio, and the aircraft is the answer to a question that was asked by a man in the dirt. Guardian is the model name. The current Apache is the Echo model, the Apache Guardian, with uprated engines, composite rotor blades, and the ability to control unmanned aircraft directly from the cockpit. A flying tank is a claim worth pausing on because it is half right and the half that is wrong matters. The Apache is armored where it counts. The crew stations have boron armor. The rotor blades are built to keep flying with holes in them. Critical systems are doubled and tripled so that losing one does not lose the aircraft. It was built with armor, redundant systems, and real ballistic tolerance, and it has come home shot to pieces more times than anyone has bothered to count. But it is not a tank. A tank can sit still and be shot at all day. A helicopter that gets shot at enough will come down, and we are going to look at the day that proved it. No mercy given, no warning cry, righteous wrath raining down from on high. That is the abstract register of the first version, and it is beautiful, and it also describes any gunship ever built. Nothing in those two lines is specifically an Apache. Keep that in your ear, because it is exactly what the remaster goes after. Then the bridge, and the old voice comes back. Now the spirits flew with wings of storm, now they crawl in steel and kill in form. No face, no heart, just teeth and flame, we still call it Apache. That is the best writing in the first version, and I have already told you I cut it. The spirits used to fly. Now they crawl, and they crawl inside metal. No face, no heart, just teeth and flame. And then the last line closes the loop that the intro opened. We called it Apache at the top. We still call it Apache at the end. The name gets said twice in this version, and it bookends the song. That is version 1. The spirits are in it from the first line and the last. What is not in it is the aircraft's actual vocabulary. Almost nothing in those verses could not be said about a cobra or a hind. Now we open the door on the name itself, because you cannot understand what the remaster does without it. On the 30th of September, 1983, the first production Apache rolled off the line at Mesa, Arizona. The Army had named it 2 years earlier. To honor the occasion, the company brought in an Apache man in traditional dress, mounted on a horse, holding a Winchester rifle. The Hughes in-house newspaper covered the ceremony. It listed every person of importance who attended. It did not print his name. I want to be straight about sourcing. That detail comes to me through aviation historians rather than from the newspaper itself, and I have not put hands on the original. But the shape of it, a man brought in to lend authenticity to a ceremony and then left unnamed in the record of that ceremony, is not an anomaly in this story. 11 Apache Scouts hold the Medal of Honor. Most of those awards were issued on the 12th of April, 1875, and the citations read, almost word for word across all of them, gallant conduct during campaigns and engagements with Apaches. Apaches in United States Army uniform, decorated by the United States for fighting Apaches. We barely know who they were. They served under single names, usually nicknames. Chiquito meant little guy, and there were several men called Chiquito. There were several called Jim. El Satsusu meant skinny. Sergeant Alchuse went by at least 7 names. The Army's filing system assigned each band a letter and each fighting age man a number by perceived status, and Alchuse was designated A1. There is a lake in Arizona named A1 after him. He visited the White House twice, met several presidents, and spent his later years pushing education for young Apaches, telling them to learn the ways of the white people, but stay true to the ways of the Indian. Sergeant Rowdy of Company A took the last of the 11 on the 7th of March, 1890. Now what the Army did with them. The United States did not track the Chiricahua into the Sierra Madre on its own. Apache Scouts led them there. 2 scouts, Martin and Cayeta, were the men directly responsible for bringing about Geronimo's surrender. In September of 1886, Geronimo surrendered to General Nelson Miles at Skeleton Canyon in Arizona Territory and handed over a Winchester rifle and a Colt revolver. He had roughly 38 people with him, most of them women and children. Miles then recommended that the entire Chiricahua people be shipped to Florida, including the 385 living peacefully on reservations who had done nothing at all. President Cleveland backed it, and then the Army disarmed its own scouts and imprisoned them with the people they had just tracked down. Chatto had served as a scout. He had been to Washington, had met the Secretary of the Interior, had been given a medal. On the way home, his train was turned around, and he was taken to Fort Leavenworth and held. The telegram ordering it survives. It says that it is the wish of the President that none of the Indians who came to Washington should return to Arizona within reach of communication with those at Fort Apache until the transfer to Fort Marion has been completed. They were declared prisoners of war in September of 1886. Fort Marion in St. Augustine, Florida first, where they died in numbers. Then Fort Pickens and Mount Vernon Barracks in Alabama, 7 years. Then Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Geronimo died there of pneumonia on the 17th of February, 1909, 23 years a prisoner, having spent his last years released only with government permission to appear at World's Fairs and Wild West shows as a curiosity. The Chiricahua were held as prisoners of war until 1913, 27 years. The Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian describes it as the longest captivity of any group in American history. Around 500 at the start of it, 261 alive at the end. Sources differ slightly on both figures, and I am giving you the range rather than picking the number that hits hardest. In 1913, they were released and given a choice. About a third stayed at Fort Sill. About 2/3 went to the Mescalero Reservation in New Mexico. 56 years after that release, the Army wrote Army Regulation 70-28. 68 years after that release, it applied one of those names to the deadliest attack helicopter ever built. 70 years after that release, it stood an unnamed Apache man on a horse with a Winchester next to it for the photograph. Geronimo handed a Winchester to Nelson Miles in 1886. An Apache man held a Winchester at Mesa in 1983. I am not going to tell you what to do with that. I am just going to put the two of them next to each other and let them sit. Which brings us back to the last line of that chorus, and the word most listeners will never look up. The Gone. The Gone are the mountain spirits. Apache tradition holds that Usan, the creator, sent them to the Apache to teach them how to live and to protect them. Apache accounts describe them coming down out of caves in the mountains and teaching the people how to hunt, how to plant, how to heal the sick, how to govern themselves, how to stay in harmony with the world around them. That order matters. They are teachers first. The protecting is part of the teaching, not the point of it. The crown dancers who carry them do not represent the gone. They embody them. Apache sources describe men spending as long as 20 years learning how. There are 4 dancers and a 5th figure, the messenger, and without the 5th, the group is not complete. 4 is sacred. 4 directions, 4 seasons, 4 sacred mountains, 4 sacred colors. And the purpose of the dance, stated plainly in every account I could find, is to protect the community from sickness and from enemies. Now go back to that chorus line. Hydras crack, Gone's vengeance flows. The song has taken the protectors and put them on the attacking side of the equation. The ones who were sent to guard the village are now the thing coming over the ridge. That is a hell of a move, and it is the tension this whole episode is built on. Here is where I stop. I am not going to describe the ceremony, I am not going to explain what the symbols on the crowns mean, or walk you through the regalia, or reproduce any of the songs. That material is living sacred practice for the Chiricahua, the Mescalero, the Hikuriyu, and the other Apache nations, and it is not mine to hand out. The Mescalero generally do not permit photography of the mountain spirit dancers, and by several accounts, groups performing at public events will deliberately alter their songs and movements so that what is actually sacred stays behind the line. Apache people drew that line about their own tradition, and I am going to stay on this side of it. One more fact belongs here. In 1883, the federal government issued the Code of Indian Offenses, which made traditional native dances, feasts, and medicine practices punishable offenses. 1883, the government criminalized ceremonies like it. 1969, the Army wrote a regulation requiring that its gunships be named for the people who danced it. Those are 2 dates. So, the remaster. It opens with the same voice, saying almost the same thing. Once, the sky held spirits made of wind and bone. Now it carries something colder. It does not speak. It does not sleep. It hunts. 4 lines instead of 6, and one thing is missing. The name. The first version said we called it Apache right there at the top. This version does not. It stops on it hunts, and it leaves you standing there without being told what it is. That is a pacing decision, and it is the right one. You do not have to name the thing in the doorway. You just have to let the listener hear it breathing. First verse, and here is where the rewrite shows. Check the skyline, hear that hiss. Hellfire, lock that shit, don't miss. Same first 4 words as version 1. Then it changes completely. A mounted archer with a Hellfire kiss became Hellfire, locked that shit, don't miss. That is the whole remaster in one substitution. The image went away, and the cockpit came in. Locked means the seeker has the target. It is a word a crew actually says. It is also an overstatement, and I am flagging it now rather than defending it later. The Hellfire is extraordinarily accurate. The aircraft carrying it is not invulnerable. No hooves, but the desert rings, 30 Mike Mike when the chain gun sings. The horse survives, and the ground became the desert, which is more specific and costs nothing. And 30 Mike Mike is jargon worth unpacking. Mike is the phonetic alphabet's letter M. 2 of them is MM. Millimeters. 30 millimeter, said the way a soldier says it when he is in a hurry. Pilots got the FLIR lit white. CPG marks targets left and right. 2 acronyms in one couplet, and the song gets the division of labor exactly right, which almost nothing does. FLIR is FLIR, forward-looking infrared. It is a camera that sees heat instead of light, which means it works in total darkness, and it means a warm engine block or a warm human being glows against cold ground. Lit white means white-hot polarity. The crew can flip it, so heat shows either as white against black or black against white. And here is the part the song gets right. There are 2 separate sensor turrets on this aircraft, and they belong to 2 different men. The pilot in back flies on the pilot night vision sensor, which crews call PINVIS. That one exists so he can fly the aircraft at night. The front seater has TADS, the Target Acquisition Designation Site, and that is the one that finds things and lasers them. See, PG is the front seater. Co-pilot gunner. He is not the co-pilot in the airline sense. He can fly the aircraft, but his job is the weapons, and he sits forward and low in the nose with the whole world in front of him. So the couplet says the pilot is flying on his sensor while the gunner works targets on his. 2 men, 2 pictures, 2 jobs in the same airframe. That is the normal division of labor rather than a hard wall. Both seats have flight controls, and both crewmen are rated pilots, so the roles can shift when they need to. But that couplet describes how it usually runs, and almost nothing else in popular music gets it that close. 2 crew, 1 coffin tandem seat, 4 blades chopping through the heat. Grim and honest. 2 men in 1 airframe means 2 men share whatever happens to it. And 4 blades is the specific thing that beat Bell in 1976. The whisper comes back, changed. Ironhide, gates at a jog, stalks the wadi, cursed war dog. The realm became the wadi. A wadi is a dry watercourse, a riverbed with no river in it, and it is the terrain feature an Apache crew uses to stay out of sight. Abstract went out, ground truth came in. Same edit, over and over, all through this version. Chorus, nearly unchanged. Apache, twin turbos, death rides 2. Apache, longbow locks, Tads burns true. Apache, chain gun grins brim pulled low. Apache, hydra cracks, Gon's wrath below. Points became locks, fire became burns, vengeance became wrath. That is it. 4 lines, 3 word swaps, and the hook is otherwise the hook, which tells you something. Whatever was wrong with the first version, it was never the chorus. Second verse is entirely new. Not 1 line of it existed before. Cass inbound Guardians engaged, 16 Hellfires in the cage. Cass is CAS, close air support. 1 correction offered gently. That is the fixed-wing term. When the Army runs rotary wing fires, it is called close combat attack, and the distinction matters to the people doing it because the control procedures are different. But CAS is what everybody says out loud, including plenty of soldiers. 16 Hellfires is the paper maximum. 4 hardpoints, 4 quad launchers, 4 missiles each. Rockets, salvo, ripple fire, 76 reasons you expire. Ripple fire is real terminology. The rockets do not all leave at once. They go in a programmed sequence, milliseconds apart, which keeps the aircraft stable and spreads the pattern on the ground. 76 is also a real maximum. 4 hardpoints, 4 pods, 19 tubes each. And here is the flag. You cannot have both. There are only 4 pylons. 16 Hellfires means no rockets. 76 rockets means no Hellfires. The song is stacking 2 separate maximum configurations back-to-back for effect. A common mixed load is 8 Hellfires, 38 rockets, and 1,200 rounds of 30mm. And on the night we opened this episode with, Task Force Normandy flew even lighter than that, cutting to 19 rockets, because the fuel math for a 90-mile penetration and a 90-mile return did not close otherwise. Danger close, the grunts don't flinch. That bird don't miss by half an inch. Danger close is a formal designation, not a figure of speech. It marks fires close enough to friendly troops that the ground commander has to personally accept the risk before the aircraft is cleared to shoot. When a rifle platoon calls danger close, they are telling the aircraft that the enemy is near enough that the margin has gone to 0, and they are accepting that anyway. Which brings us to that bird don't miss by half an inch. Second overstatement, and here is the counterweight. The night of the 23rd of March, 2003, running into the early hours of the 24th, the 11th Attack Helicopter Regiment committed its Apaches out of Tactical Assembly Area Vicksburg for a deep attack against the Medina Division of the Iraqi Republican Guard near Karbala. Almost nothing went right. The 3rd Infantry Division had moved faster than planned, so the mission was pulled forward 24 hours. The suppression strikes went in on the original timeline. The Apaches arrived 3 hours late, and by then the fighter bombers had gone home and the Iraqi air defenses had recovered. One aircraft crashed on takeoff when its pilot became disoriented. As the formation turned north, signals intelligence picked up more than 50 Iraqi cell phone calls warning the units ahead of them. The Iraqis triggered the ambush by shutting off the city lights and turning them back on a few seconds later. The counts differ depending on which account you read. The Army's own summary says 32 aircraft went and 31 came back damaged. Other accounts put it at 31, launched with all but one of the survivors shot up. The picture is the same either way. 15 to 20 bullet holes apiece on average. One took 29 hits. 16 main rotor blades, 6 tail blades, 6 engines, and 5 drive shafts were written off. One aircraft went down intact, and its 2 crewmen were taken prisoner and put on television. The Medina Division sustained limited damage. The Army stopped flying independent deep attacks after that. The lesson was not that the aircraft was bad. The lesson was that massed small arms fire from prepared troops at low altitude over terrain you do not own will chew up anything with rotors. So, when the song says that bird don't miss by half an inch, that is the song talking. And it is a flying tank right up until it is not. Thermal white on running men, the gun track follows, speaks amen. Thermal white is the same white-hot picture from the first verse, now pointed at people instead of vehicles. That is the coldest couplet in either version, and it should be. And the gun track follows is a piece of hardware described in 4 words. The chain gun is slaved to a helmet sight. There is a sensor tracking where the gunner's head is pointed, and the gun turret follows it. He looks, it goes. Which is exactly why crews learn very quickly not to look at things casually. Whisper, changed again. Ironhide hunts through the fog, hell's own hound, unchained war dog. In the first version, it stalked the realm. Then it stalked the wadi. Now it hunts through the fog, and the war dog is off the leash. The animal has been getting less restrained every time it appears. Third verse is pure doctrine, and there is nothing like it in the first version at all. Bob, upshoot, and dip the nose, pop-up attack, that's how it goes. A bob-up is exactly what it sounds like. The aircraft sits masked behind terrain with nothing showing. It rises just far enough to get the sensors above the skyline, acquires, engages, and drops back down. Total exposure measured in seconds. The pop-up attack is the profile that maneuver belongs to. You do not fly at a target. You appear, shoot, and disappear. Masking terrain nap of earth, Uncle Sam shows his girth. Masking terrain is using the ground itself as cover, a ridge, a tree line, a wadi. And nap of the earth is the lowest of the three standard flight modes. Low level is straight and level at a set altitude. Contour flight follows the shape of the ground. Nap of the earth is the extreme version, varying airspeed and altitude constantly, hugging every contour and tree line to stay under detection. That line runs straight back to where this episode started, because nap of the earth at 50 feet is precisely how Task Force Normandy got 90 miles into Iraq without anyone knowing they were coming. Uncle Sam showing you his girth is not doctrine. That one is the song being the song. Longbow radar paints the grid, fire and forget right where you hid. Paints is real usage. A radar paints a target the way a flashlight paints a wall. The longbow sweeps, detects, sorts moving targets from stationary ones, classifies them by type, prioritizes them by threat, and hands the crew a picture in seconds. And fire and forget is the back half of the Hellfire acronym, finally getting its own line. The radar-guided version of the missile does not need the launching aircraft to hold a laser on the target. Shoot and leave. The aircraft can be back behind the ridge before impact. Millimeter wave don't need your face, just the heat signature you can't erase. Millimeter wave is the longbow's radar band. Very short wavelength, which buys resolution, and it sees through dust, smoke, rain, and haze that would blind a camera. Small technical flag on the second half of that couplet. Millimeter wave reads radar return, not heat. Heat is the thermal sensors, a different system. The song blends the two, and it blends them into a good line, so I am marking it rather than complaining about it. What the couplet gets right is the thing that actually matters. The aircraft is not looking for your face, or your uniform, or anything about you that you could change. It is reading a physical property of the object you happen to be standing next to. Then the gang chant, "Ironhide, no place to hide, Gons ride with American pride." The Gon, riding in the machine. Not invoked from a distance, not remembered. Riding in it. The first version said the spirits crawl in steel. This version puts them in the cockpit and gives them the controls. Final chorus, everything stacked, and then it all falls away and one voice says one word. Apache. In the first version, that word came in the opening breath and again at the bridge. Here it is, the last thing on the track. The song withholds the name for 4 minutes and then hands it to you on the way out the door. I did not plan that. I rewrote the verses because they did not flow, and the name ended up somewhere else, and it works better there. Let me put you in the seat for a minute because none of this lands until you understand what it is like in there. The monocle sits in front of one eye, not both. One. The aircraft feeds a green image into one eye while the other is still looking at the instrument panel and the desert past it, and your brain is expected to reconcile those two pictures into one world. Crews will tell you it takes months before that stops giving you headaches, and that some people never get it at all. The gun follows your head. The engines are behind and above you, and they are loud in a way that goes into your teeth. Everything that matters comes through the helmet. It is cold up there, and the heater is a subject air crews have opinions about. You are wearing body armor and a survival vest and gloves strapped in tight enough that you cannot really turn, which is fine, because you do not turn. You look through the sensors. The pilot is behind you, and you cannot see him. You have flown with him for a year. You know exactly what he sounds like when things are normal, and exactly what he sounds like when they are not. And that second voice is a piece of information you will trust faster than any instrument. And the whole time, the machine is doing what nobody in 1972 quite imagined, sitting behind a ridge with only the mast above the skyline, seeing everything, seen by nothing, deciding. That is what is meant when he says it does not speak, and it does not sleep. The 8 crews of Task Force Normandy came home from the 17th of January and were awarded air medals with a V device. For firing the opening shots of a war, 90 miles inside enemy territory, at night, with the entire coalition air campaign riding on it, they received a decoration that a great many aviators receive. Their battalion commander thought that was wrong. His name was Richard Cody, and he spent the next 3 decades pushing. On the 15th of May, 2025, at the Army Aviation Association of America Summit in Nashville, Tennessee, 15 of those aviators were awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. 34 years late, some of them were there to take it. Tom Drew, who said party in 10, was there. 2 of them were not. Mrs. Lois Miller accepted for Chief Warrant Officer 3, James Miller. Mrs. Joe Elder accepted for Chief Warrant Officer 3, Dave Jones. Jones was the one who keyed his microphone that night as the missiles came off the rails toward the radar site and said, "This one's for you, Saddam." He did not live to be handed the medal. The aircraft is still flying. The Echo model is in production at Mesa, on the same ground where the first one rolled out in 1983. Attack battalions still train the Bob up, still fly nap of the earth, still work in hunter-killer teams. The doctrine that Karbala broke got rebuilt, and the aircraft got smarter instead of getting retired. And the name is still on the side of it. The Chiricahua are still here. So are the Mesculairo, the Hikuriyu, the Lipan, the White Mountain, the San Carlos. Native Americans serve in the United States Armed Forces at among the highest per capita rates in the country, and Apache men and women are among them. I could not verify a specific Apache tribal member flying this aircraft, and I am not going to claim one I cannot name. But the word on the fuselage came off a list built out of the wars fought against those people, and their descendants wear the uniform that carries it. Both of those things are true at once. This has been War Stories Behind the Song. I'm Warrior Shaman. Until next time, honor the history, respect the craft, and never forget the people who lived it.
Once, the sky held spirits made of wind and bone. Now it carries something colder. It does not speak. It does not sleep.
it hunts. Hellfire lock, that shit don't miss. No hooves but the desert rings. 30 Mike when the chain gun sings. Pilot's got the FLIR lit wide. CPG marks targets left and right. 2 crew, 1 coffin tandem seat. 4 blades chopping through the heat. I'd hide, gates at a jog. Stalks the wadi, curse the war dog.
Apache!
Twin turbos, death rides too.
Apache!
Longbow locks, tabs burns true.
Apache!
Chain gun grins, brim pulled low.
Apache!
Hydra cracks, skins draft below. Chasm-bound guardians engage. 16 Hellfires in the cage. Rocket salvo, ripple fire. 76 reasons you expire. Danger close, the grunts don't flinch. That bird don't miss by half an inch. Thermal wide on running men. The gun track follows, say amen. Ironhide runs through the fog. Hell's on hound, unchained war dog.
Apache!
Twin turbos, death rides too.
Apache!
Longbow logs, tabs burns true.
Apache!
Chain gun grins, brim pull low.
Apache!
Hydra cracks, games wrath below. Pop up, shoot and dip the nose. Pop up, attack, that's how it goes. Masking terrain, nap of earth. Uncle Sam shows his girth. Longbow radar paints the grid. Fire and forget right where you hid. Millimeter wave, don't need your face. Just the heat signature you can't erase. Ironhide, no place to hide. Guns ride with American pride.
Apache!
Twin turbos, death rides too.
Apache!
Longbow locks, tabs burns true.
Apache!
Chain gun grins, brim pull low.
Apache!
Hydra cracks, guns wrath below. Chain gun grins, brim pull low. Hydra guns wrath below.
Apache.